everyone, and in this series we're gonna create our third-person game in Unity from absolutely scratch. I'll show you everything from character modeling to game design and coding, so you can bring your ideas to life. In this part, we're gonna create our character in Blender. For character creation, we will have a quick guide where you can find some tips. And for development in Unity, there will be a step-by-step tutorial. If you have any question, you can leave them in a comment below. For first, we're creating the new scene, pressing 1 to go to the orthographic view, and then loading reference images by pressing Shift A and choosing image. Here I opening my base mesh of the face and the hands. I'll leave the link in the comments below. You can download it from my Sketchfab. Here my reference image for the face. I'm opening it and moving it to its face. Then we're gonna correct our face mesh for repeating the shape of our reference image. I'm making little child for my game, so I need the baby face. Here I am unwrapping the base mesh that I corrected before. It's a long and repetitive process to move the vertices of unwrapped UV for its places. You might be wondering, why am I making a child and not an adult? Here is the reason. It's because I'm making a game with horror elements, and that means I want to make my character small and weak. It doesn't have to be a child, but such a move increases impression and increases the fear for the player. If you are making a shooter game, then you don't have strict rules for choosing a character, but it's cool when your character looks weaker than the enemies. The player will get more pleasure from defeating a strong opponent than from defeating a weak one. I'm using a photo-based texture, which means that some areas, such as behind the ears and the seam behind the head, I'll fix manually after texture is baked. Use the best resolution of photo you are going to put on your model, so the texture doesn't look too smooth. Keep in mind that you will be able to fix some elements after the texture is baked, but try to get enough at this stage. Take your time. When the texture is on, the imperfections of your geometry can become more visible. You can always fix something after you textured it. I pay special attention to the eyes. I think this is the most important part of the face. Make sure your texture looks good from all the angles. The next important detail of the character is hands. Of course, we look at hands and face first of all to understand emotions of the character. This is another reason why you should pay special attention to the hands, and this applies to animation. For the bones inside your character's fingers to rotate well and the hand movement looks natural, I prefer to use 3 rows of points per joint and 6 points for each row. This is my ratio of low poly to visual quality. Also ignore the textures on the hands. Sketchfab file won't have any materials. I don't know why, but the texture for kids' hands was way easier to find than for adult hands. As you can see, the skin color doesn't quite match the face, but again, I leave it until I bake the texture for all characters. It's almost impossible to find like tone-on-tone shots that match each other, so don't be afraid to fix some things. And here is the thing that helps with UV, and for some reason now wasn't so obvious to me for the beginning of my Blender modeling way, but the functions that work for geometry in edit mode work the same for unwrapped geometry. Genius! Sometimes when you learn something by your own, you can miss simple things, but this is not a big deal. Anyway, you won't have the whole functionality, and sometimes it's a bit weird, like you won't be able to merge points to the first or to the last, although you can merge to the center. It's cool to use V. Like, I still don't know how to call this function, but by this you don't need to reattach the whole part from stretch and lose progress if you notice that some little seam is missing, like the gap between fingers. I tried quite a lot of different ways to connect legs to the body, and this one looks really weird when you extrude in the legs, but you should trust the process. Keep in mind where the joint will be. It's important to have enough geometry for each bone, otherwise the movement won't go well. For elbows and knees, it's better to use 3 rows of vertices and diamond type hinge or something like that. I'll get stuck a little over the elbows here. The video is just 20 times speed up, so it seems like I immediately remembered how to do them. It looks like really difficult thing when you watching this part with the elbows, but if you pay attention to the way I'm doing it for the knees, you see this is nothing difficult. And I also didn't mention that I always use 1 for the roughness and 0 for specular and metallic in my materials properties when I'm texturing my model, because when you turn specular it's quite harder to see the right tone of your texture. Here I'm doing like double work by taking both sides of the symmetrical jumpsuit and not just one of them, but here it's definitely worth taking time to apply the mirror modifier and apply the texture on both sides, or you will have like an ugly seam in the center of your model. When your texture is asymmetrical, even for symmetrical objects, of course the model looks more alive. It's like perfection in imperfection or something like that. Remember I literally just stuck with my elbows? Forget it! Comparing to the feet, it was just nothing. With this feet I stuck for a long time. Because, I really don't want to waste a lot of polygons on them, but at the same time I need to somehow stretch this dumb picture over these dumb faces. The character, as it were, will not have shoes and will spank on the floor with his bare feet, but at the same time I don't want to walk out each finger. Classic dilemma in general. When you start blocking out the shapes of your character, you're using like the basics forms for it. I'm using the cube, and a lot of people are actually using something like cubes or rectangles for the body and the hands, like the head even. And after you did it, you might have not enough smooth transition of forms. That's why you need to pay attention to different angles of your model. You might have like too edgy transition between shoulders and the body, shoulders and arms, like knees, but you just rotating your character and see some things you need to fix. It's like always something to fix. You open your reference, you fixing stuff. You apply the texture, you fixing stuff. You can fix the form on like almost any stage of creating character. Even after applying the skeleton weight painting, you always have the ability to add some geometry when needed. When you making long hair, you need to use planes for it, and when you making a short hair, you can use like the base of your skull. You can extrude a little bit, make the shape more noisy, more fluffy, add some planes just for little hair, so it to help it look natural. But if you are making long hair, you need to do it like all by planes for all the hair, and I didn't find the other way than just duplicating and rotating and pasting the hair strands. One detail that I didn't did here, but it could speed out the process a little bit. You should apply the texture on this plane of hair when you doing the first one and then duplicating it, like you will duplicating the piece of the mesh with the texture already. And I recommend to add extra hair more than you think you need, because when you're using cutout material in the Unity, it like cut out your hair a little bit more than Blender did it. Blender did it like smooth, and when you trying to do the same in Unity, you have more edgy, more rough result. Here you can see I'm applying the little hair parts for the planes of the hair I did before. It takes little time cover each plane of the hair with other planes of the hair, using finger tool and the brush to for little fixing of the hair. It's like really important to erase some alpha even in your parts, because without it your hair looks like the pieces of fabric. The only way to make it look natural is to erase the alpha between little hair streaks and add more and more hair parts on the head of your character. Don't get too carried away with following the shape of the hair with geometry. Otherwise the hair will look overstretched in central spaces. Try to apply UV so it takes as much texture as possible, but don't move individual vertices too much, and leave space to the edge, otherwise the hair will look cut off. It's better to increase the plane on the model or cover empty space of the head with more hair planes. And look how cool finger works here. I've only been using it recently. Well, a little bit softened brush too. But if you want to mix two colors, then increase the strength of smear brush. I think the finger calls like this in Blender. Okay, you just decreasing the strength and increasing the radius, and you can mix two colors really quick. If you want to draw something by pulling the color from one place to another, then reduce the radius and increase the strength. Usually if I need to refine something in the drawing, then I use almost full strength, like 0.8 to 0.9. You get this soft brush effect with fairly clear border. A couple of finishing touches on the geometry and we can start baking the texture. You don't need to use Smart UV project because you will work on the texture after you baked it, so create a new UV map, select it and slowly unwrap your model. Next, I make the promised adjustments to the image, add details where necessary, remove what needs to be removed and add what needs to be added. If you are confused where to add seams, you can see where I do them. You shouldn't add too many seams because it will be difficult for you to work with the texture if there are gonna be too many unclear and small elements in it. I select each part of the character. It's cool here to switch to the face selection mode. So on L you can select elements separated by your seams. I am picking up UV pieces and making the face and hands a bit bigger because they need more details. As you can see, feet and palms texture can be baked together. You don't need two elements of the same texture. To do this, try to superimpose two elements as close as possible and then merge by distance. If some extra points have merged together, change the distance parameter in the settings. Once ready, bake. After baking, you can notice some mistakes and increases on the texture, and finally it's time to fix them. Textures are the key detail in low poly models, so let's get started. I'm using lighten as brush blend mode. To lighten skin tone, set the brush strength to low and set the brush color to the shade you want to add. To darken the skin tone, I use the blend mode multiple or color burn. Try what works best for you. Different pictures need different modes. Next, you need to remove rough transitions. For this we use soften brush and smear brush. And now it's quite clear that even a small amount of geometry can look pretty cool when you use it correctly. Low poly games have high technical advantages, and as you can see, it can look really good. And thanks to the day, this kind of low poly game can easily run on any computer and even on smartphones. Don't be too naive and don't think that some details such as hair on the back of the head won't be visible and this can be left as it is. When you render a model, you can put it under a central angle and don't worry too much about what's behind of it. Even if the character has like a second face on the back, nobody's gonna know. But in games, you can't predict at what angle the character will be looked at, so it's better to take care that there are no painted bands on the forehead. If you have some kind of relief, for example, it's a knitted sweater or woolen fabric, then you can no longer smudge it. So keep in mind, if you need a shadow here, you can draw it in multiple blend mode. Well, you can still try to make radius of smear brush like bigger and the strands upper, but it won't work sometimes. Okay, I made the jar a little bit smaller and moved the necker of the sweater too. After that, I remembered about the teeth. For animation, you need to make not just eye sockets, but also teeth with a tangle. Even if your character opens mouth just a little bit, you can see the teeth and it looks kinda creepy without them. I export my character to FBX and import it to mixamo.com. This site has a lot of motion capture animations, and also it will create an outer rig for your character, and the coolest thing is that it's absolutely free. After that, I return my character to Blender, and here I need to slightly correct the character's skeleton. The mirror on X is not included, and weight painted for a little. Likely the site does the basic of work for us. I've baked the eye texture and now I'm only doing it from the original photo cause I'd rather paint on the white of the eye than try to make some random eye from the internet look natural to my character. Next, I need to make a normal map. I'll start with the bump and bake this terrible pixel texture of bumps, so that later I can smooth everything in those places where I need it. I smooth the normal map for the hair to any brushes like smear and smooth works great here. Don't be afraid that something will happen to the normal map if you touch it. I save all text 1,000 times so that if Blender crash I don't have to start from very beginning. By the way, I don't remember if I talked about it, but down there in the materials properties there's type of viewport display, and there you can customize the display of alpha Keep in mind that in order to find out how your character will look in Unity, you'd better use an Eevee blender, not Cycles. This will give you like more similar look. And that's all for today. Next parts are coming soon. We will dive deep in development, create some cool stuff in Unity. I'll be back. Hope you are doing well. See ya!